Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 154 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to start building module boards and also plan for the other components that go into modules. Enjoy. Let's see, because of the amount of trees and whatnot that are in the way, I actually probably want to go get the crawler for this. You can take some of the travel time out of that by setting up the train station for the crystals and riding it back. So it's going to look something like this. Let's try to get this fuel lined up here. We'll probably want to do the same thing, where we unify the setup so they're all kind of the same. And there we go. That's been unified. We'll need to change this to an unloading station. Then we got to find somewhere to put all the crystals. Let's see. Let's come up through there. Probably gonna run out about setting all this up because this kind of stuff always takes lots of resources. We'll call this crystal splinter unload. So let's find our trains. There we go. So we'll say crystal splinter load. Wait until item count, but we want to check each car individually, and it looks like each one holds 12k. So blue splinter has to be equal to 12k, and we need to add more item counts for each splinter type. Make them ands and get the numbers right. Then crystal splinter unload. And it's kind of the same thing, where it's item count, and it's an OR condition, where we're checking to see if any of these equal 0. If so, go back. But we can send it down here. And there the crystals go. It'll empty eventually. So let's just take it back. And send it back there. Well, one slight advantage of the crawler being so slow is that it doesn't really care if you're taking roads or not, so you can just drive in a straight line to get to where you need to go. We need to clear out some more forests. I believe we were going down with these setups. Although doing 5 of them in a row might be kind of a lot. But let's just clear out a bunch of space here. There's all the crystals. And we've got our first setup to place. Looks like there's lots of water in the way. Didn't bring any extra landfill. That might be a problem. Well, I heard the train, so it must be going. But we need to extend these lines a little bit. For now, just do the bottom one here so we know where the bottom edge is. Then we can place the setup. I'd like to place the first one. And then we can see how it actually runs, so we don't just build all 5 setups just to find out each one suffers from the same critical flaw. Okay, so there's shallow water right here. Excellent. It looks like the garden generation is speeding up a little bit. Looks like all 3 sides are now roughly at 10 gardens. So the garden generator from nothing is continuing to help buff it up, because it will only stop when it gets to 20. There's lots of plant life going around. It's not building up yet, so we don't have a surplus. But it's getting there. You know, you see a bit of a circle going on with all that plant life, so it seems to be working. Just give it some more time, a few more hours, and hopefully it'll be fully functional. Okay, the setup is mostly ready. So now we got to get it hooked up so we can test it. Okay, looks like we got everything ready to go here. Hooked up as much as we can so we can test it. So I just ran ferric chloride all the way down here, so we can hook that up. And it just fills up the machines. Nothing exciting. So let's go through here and start hooking everything up. Let's see how it works. Pretty good from what I can see. Looks like this was set up to just dump all boards there because that was the last use of them, but we have one more use, so we need to continue them along. There we go. Let's see how this works. Seems pretty good. And then we'll just run and fill that up. So we need the solder now. Alright, let's start making these components. Add in the silicone. Looks like it needs the underground belt right here. Although I think these need to be red belts right here. Let's make the resistors. Getting pretty close to getting this running. So now we need to figure out where all these components should go. It's going to be quite a few, because it's going to be one for each color. Let's use this middle section that seems unused so far. Let's, not sure exactly how we'd want to do these belts. Might want to place all the machines down first, just to figure out where the best orientation for the belts go, but we'll just have them sticking up there because we know we want them going at least that far. Okay, so we add crystals. Then we should start making the module boards. Probably have to wait until we're doing research to see what this is like at full throttle. But that's a lot of inserters moving around. It seems pretty good. There's going to be some yellows on this section here, but this is the part we care about. It seems pretty good. I'm happy with that. Well, I made some small changes, so we have a new blueprint to use. I'll go and build all these, and then we can test all those other setups. Alright, I think I've got most everything hooked up. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but since we know the setup works, we can just start hooking everything up. And I collected all of the circuit boards in the middle here because we'll need them for researching. So since we've got nothing else in the way, let's start hooking a bunch of stuff up and see what happens. Seems pretty good. As the factory gets bigger, there's going to be a larger and larger delay in the bottleneck display circles there, so they don't respond quite as quickly as they used to. I'm doing that for UPS reasons, so no matter how big the factory is, bottleneck won't have that big of an effect. It's just it'll update slower and slower. I'm pretty happy with that. Everything looks like it's going pretty good, and it's backing up. Let's test the other colors. Seems good enough. And finally, the harmonic versions. It's a little hard to hook all these connections up, but I think I got most of them. Let's see if this one works. Yep, seems good. And the last one. Yep, looking good. So we've got all of our circuit board types up here. Now we just need to do the research. And to do that, we'll need the modules lab. Just requires 5 of each of the basic circuit board types, combined with the electrochemics lab. So I'm not sure how many of those we're going to want. So for now, we can kind of basically copy a setup of this size and see how that works. It's probably too much, but that's okay. We're going to have to modify it a bit. So I'll just kind of place it over there. The garden setup is continuing to seed itself. Still haven't quite maxed out yet, but it's getting close. Once all these seed extractors are running, then it will be going at full blast here. It's going to take a long time to handcraft. That's alright, so there's the basic lab. Looks like the rest of them. But it takes quite a few inputs. 7, in fact. So we'll want to build these in such a way that we can get 7 different resources in. Basically, it's just something like this. Let's just space it out a bit so it's got room to grow if it needs to. So we'll do like 2 belts going in on one side, and then 2 going in on the other. And then lots of little inserters going each direction here. Alright, we've got a line of research labs ready to go. And we've got all of the resources piped in here. So let's hook them up. There is a little shimmy back and forth, but eventually all of the modules get in there. Looks good. Let's see how fast this researches. Well, there's not a whole lot to research, really. We just need to put that into the modules that we need. So speed module 1 is a circuit board, a main board, module case, and module contacts. And let's do the other colors, and we might as well hit pollution cleaning and pollution producing. Let's see how it works. Well, it's pretty fast, but this is the first tier, so it's going to be fast. power usage isn't that bad. It's just going pretty quick. But we have all this built up for when research takes a whole lot longer than this. Of course, in the beginning it'll be fast. They haven't even finished up with their initial circuit board yet. Well, after all of that, you can do the next tier, which is similar, just requires more circuit boards, module contacts, and solder. And those take a little longer. And boom, just like that again, all researched. So it may seem like that was overpowered, but we needed 25 pieces for tier 1, 50 for 2, and then 100, but in groups of 2, 150, 200, and then suddenly, kerblam, 6,000 in units of 4, 8,000 in units of 4, and 10,000 in units of 4. So the early tiers are going to be quick, and the later tiers are going to be slow. Also, we can do these agricultural modules too, once we've got all of these biome planners caught up. Speaking of which, how are they doing? Still doing pretty good. They're working on it here, where a lot of these seed extractors now have 2 or 3 gardens in them. So once, I think the maximum is 3. So once they all get up to 3 gardens, then this chest will start filling up. And once it gets above 20, this garden generator will stop, and it will keep going up until it gets above 30, and then we'll start getting our seeds. We've got all of those circuit boards getting made. So now we're just down to making the modules. And there's a couple of things to consider here. For one, we're not making these circuit boards in this line, so we can get rid of those. But we want to kind of think about some of these numbers. So if you look at the progress of modules, that they require a lot of module contacts. They basically count almost as much as the electronic components as the number of things that go in there. Like a significant amount of those contacts just keep getting dumped into all these modules. So we probably don't want to do them in a separate area here, because we'd almost be maxing out a red belt. So if we ever wanted to expand this, we just have a huge central area full of these module contacts. So these are probably better to build on-site for each one of these modules. So we can kind of come in here and grab that. And it's fairly large, so it makes a big difference where this is done. Another thing is that modules, besides just requiring the basic boards, will also require module main boards at tier 3 and higher. And at tier 6, they will also start requiring the module cases to research as well. So that's something that we probably want to be making more of than the bare minimum. So our requirements for these are fairly low. Since our output is 3 per second, we only need 3 per second of these. But we could produce more. Now, these module cases are huge sinks of aluminum, but we have more to spare, and we're really not using aluminum for anything yet. So it's not much of a problem to bump this up. So if we unlink this, just say 6 per second, that will max out our factory's aluminum and have a little bit extra research speed if it ever comes down to that. Because our research speed is like 15 per second or something like that, so it's much higher than this. If you look at the resource requirements for these researches, that you require half as many main boards as circuit boards. And then they double again when you get to tier 6. And you need 1 module case for every 2 main boards for every 4 circuit boards. So that's something to consider when coming up with all these numbers. That if we're putting out 15 per second of the regular boards, we would need approximately 1/4 of that for these module cases. And having a few left over to actually make modules, then that number seems okay. And then there's this number as well, which we'd want to upgrade. It would need to be about half of what all of this stuff is. And exactly half would be 7.5. But those boards go into starting modules. So we'd want more than the bare minimum so we can keep making modules. And this doesn't seem like it's that difficult to make. Of course, requires lots of phenolic boards, but otherwise the resource requirements are fairly small, so we can just do 15 for that. So we've got some ideas of size here. The last thing we need to do is go through here and make sure we have all of these resources worked down just to their coil version. Well, we can coil up the copper plates there. Let's make sure none of these can be made in an electronics assembler. Doesn't look like it. Then coil up the solder. Then when we go back, we've got all of our low-level items. And some nice outputs. One thing we might want to consider, since there's 70 electronics assemblers in here, is to put them on the bus. I was kind of handcrafting them before, but they actually take a long time to make. They have a lot of resources that go into it. Oh, but it's the white circuit boards, though, which is always a little problematic. Well, at least can I make the first tier machines, or are we making them? At least to try to limit the amount of handcrafting here. Although this does just require the basic circuit boards, which are right there. It's a little annoying to send them off to the side, but I think that's what I'm going to do and be lazy about it. Well, it certainly makes them fast. Alright, probably want to grab the 2 stacks of that real quick. But in the meantime, we can try to build our setup here. Let's see. Let's do the module cases, which is 80 assembling machines. Looks like the speed on this is all very slow. So we probably can just mash these in there as tight as we can get them. Or we have 2 inputs on the inside. Then the outputs can be shared on the outside. You're going to need lots of inserters for this. Oh, hey, look at that. We're just about to start getting a backup of the plant life samples. Still not building up any gardens, but these inserters are set up based on the condition of this warehouse. So once it fills up with plant life, they will stop turning on, which should really accelerate the buildup of gardens here. And most of these machines are full. They're getting pretty close. So, excellent. I was just looking at the setup here, that it's getting a lot longer than I thought it would be. And there's only so much more space it has to go before it starts hitting this train station here. But we've still got some space. And hey, if we have to do the turn of shame and like turn left and go down here to keep it going, well then so be it. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, so how many is this? 11 rows here, which is slightly too many. I wanted to have 10. Something like this. Because then we can copy it a bunch to get our 80. Okay. That should be our 80 machines. Making the module cases. Now let's do the main boards. Let's see, that kind of looks similar to the other boards we were making up here. Like, it looks very similar. In fact, I kind of want to just copy all of it. Yeah, it's basically identical. The main board and the basic board basically have the same requirements. So we could just build this much larger. How much larger? Well, we need 67 machines. Maybe we can do like 22 of them. Because we need approximately 3 of these assembling machines up here. Something repeatable like this. So you can grab it and do it again. And grab it and do it again. It looks like this is dense enough to require power poles in every single slot, basically. So how many do we have here? 66. That's close enough to the 67 that I'm fine with that, because this is basically just for extra research. And these will need to be hooked up and whatnot, but actually one mod I kind of want to show is a pipe visualizer, which I've recently installed here. You can hit this, and then you can hover over pipe systems to see if everything's connected. Or if you'd rather just see it all the time, you can kind of hit that. So this one isn't connected because it doesn't have the side connection pipes. But it can really help when you've got something pretty complicated. So you come here to like look at where all the hydrogen's going, where all the oxygen's going. It's a pretty big system. It's neat. It's cool to be able to see where all the fluids are going. It's also a good way of just double checking things, but this looks pretty good as it is. So we've got the supplementary components, so now it's just time to do the modules. And since these are all identical except for the color, we can do basically 3 identical setups here. We also have the option of pollution producing or pollution cleaning, but I don't really see myself using very many of those modules, so I'm just not going to bother with them for now. I suppose they could come in handy if you've got nothing else better for your slots, or you're mining next to a wall of biters or something, but it's not important for me because on my settings the pollution doesn't actually increase the evolution rate. The only thing that increases evolution is fighting biter nests, so I'm not as concerned with that. And there's also the combined module of agriculture here, but that will require making the other modules first. And it's overall just going to kind of be a fairly complicated setup. So I want to save that for later. It's less important than getting these productivity modules out. Well, at least in this situation, we have a nice clean ratio of 2 assemblers for speed module 2 to 1 assembler of speed module 1. We'll still have to struggle getting all the resources in there, but at least we have a ratio to deal with. Let's see here. Well, those can be module 2s, and they share components, module contacts, and speed circuit boards. So if possible, we want to try to take those off the belt here too. It's going to be a little difficult. So we can have those inserters in the middle sharing the modules. And then these components that are coming through are going to be the circuit boards and the contacts. It actually only requires basically 1 inserter for each thing. And let's just use a corner inserter here, just to make that cleaner, rather than having a belt snake all over the place. So that actually covers quite a bit of the setup already. The only resources that are different, the first machine requires contacts and main boards, and the other one will require solder. It'll need another belt for the output. And that's basically all there is to it, short of the contacts and whatnot. Let's make sure this is all good. Seems like it. And how many machines in total? Well, 13.4 of these ones. Because space is a concern, I kind of want to just go straight up and down with these rather than doubling them up like this. But I don't know, it might be too many machines to just go up and down like this here. Because that's 7 of them. So doing 14 of them straight up on a line seems like it would go into the ocean. That seems pretty good. So that's 14 on each side. That looks good. We've got some extra belts, and then we'd have an output here. And the output doesn't actually have to go anywhere. We can just have a chest here and a limiter to keep it from getting too full. We are going to need quite a few modules in the long term, but we're only producing them at 1 per second. So if we have a huge setup, it might need hundreds of them. We might be sitting there for 5 minutes waiting for this. And modules disappear pretty quick. If every machine takes a couple of them. You know, if we filled this whole thing up with modules, just this one thing, we've got 42 machines, so that would be 84 modules just in this alone. So we probably want to have a fairly large number. So how about let's put in 1,000 modules in here, just to get it nice and full. Well, that's not quite everything, because we need to make the contacts, and we need to make the solder. And what's interesting about that is the solder and contact making systems can be side by side. So for example, if we have a second one of these, just over here, if we make contacts in here, we can make the contact setup twice as big and feed contacts into this side and into this side. And then on the outside here, we would make solder. And the same for this side. Although solder is such a small requirement, it almost probably doesn't even matter where it gets made. So we're going to need 12 assembling machines making the contacts. So I'm going to make them 12, but in a straight line. So that way, like if they're right here and we double it up because the machine's next door, they can just be on the other side. And then you would get double the amount and it would take up less space. But it's pretty straightforward. Copper and silver makes a contact, and the input numbers are all very low, that the contacts are less dense than the resources that go in. So that's the main limiting factor. So the resources can come down here, the output would go up. We will need a machine here chopping up the copper. And one thing to keep in mind is it might be serving twice as many machines here, so the inserter requirement will be higher. That takes care of the contacts. Yeah, if we needed to double this, we would just take all of this, plop it on this other side, and then there would be another setup over here picking up these contacts. So the last thing, I believe, was the solder, which we could kind of do with another machine over here shared between the two sides. Hopefully this would all fit. It seems like it would. I don't know if making a copy of it now would check that, because it won't let us flip the design, but the idea is that it would kind of be like this, basically, but it won't let us flip it, so it's not going to be perfectly lined up, but it seems like it would work. I think that covers most of it. So when we're collecting resources, we'll need the resource to build 2 more of these, so we'll have to make sure to pick those resources up. Otherwise, it looks like we have everything we need. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we're going to put everything together and start producing some modules. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.